This is Toledo Symphony Lab, a behind-the-scenes look at the world of classical music from WGTE Public Media and your Toledo Symphony. I'm Brad Cresswell, and joining me in the studio today are the Toledo Symphony's president and CEO, Zach Vassar, principal second violin, and artistic administrator, Merwin Sue. And on the phone, we have a very special guest. Let me play a welcoming fanfare for you. We have a special guest, and that is Mélisande McNabney. Mélisande is performing on harpsichord with the Toledo Symphony in a concert this weekend. Welcome, Mélisande.
Well, it is quite the welcome. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Hey, we have a fanfare every time a special guest comes on, so consider yourself, just part of the family, as it were.
This was a truly special fanfare, though.
Yeah, yes. I really hope you stay with us.
Now, enlighten me as to what you're thinking about the fanfare we did.
Me? Well, it's such a brassy, aggressive fanfare, and it kind of contrasts quite a lot with Poulenc. Yes. She's going to be performing.
And also contrasts with Mélisande, I suppose.
Well, if you listen carefully, I think we even heard a forte piano in there, so
we totally did not.
So there's a connection.
Yeah, I was expecting something more Baroque, I have to say.
Well,
I'll take it.
Hey, we're just getting started. All right? So Mélisande is on the phone with us today. Mélisande is playing harpsichord for the Francis Poulenc harpsichord concerto, also called the concert champêtre. I got really excited when I first saw it was a concert champêtre because I was thinking, oh, champagne, the champagne concerto. And then I realized champagne was a French word, really. So, yeah, I got that all wrong.
Yeah, so champêtre is more like, it means I guess you could translate it with bucolic. It's, from the countryside. So, yeah.
Isn't bucolic a French word?
Yeah. So you just translated a French word into a French word. Yeah.
That's my specialty. That's what we do here, right? Anyway.
That is pretty much how Alain does rehearsals.
Yes.
He thinks of a French word that doesn't have an English equivalent and then translate it into a French word that does have an English equivalent. And that's how we rehearse.
Yeah.
That's it.
Very good. All right. So the concert, getting back to what we're talking about today, that's happening Saturday. It's this Saturday, February 4th at 8 o'clock p.m. at the Peristyle. JoAnn Falletta is conducting the TSO for the second time. She talked last January. I'm going to actually talk with her a little bit later in the show today. So think of the questions that you may want to ask her, and I'll pass them along. But Mélisande is playing that Poulenc harpsichord concerto, and it's an all-French program. There's music by Paul Dukas and Maurice Ravel as well, so we can touch on that a little bit. But before we do, Mélisande, I told you that we were going to listen to your story, and so this is where the Baroque-type music comes in, okay? Because I've got some background music for you. Let me get that started. Okay, so Mélisande, let's hear your story.
Well, I was born in Quebec City, so I'm a French-Canadian, actually. I have a Francophone mother and an Anglophone father. McNabney is an Irish last name, so that's my background. You can kind of tell from my name that it's a mix. So I grew up in Montreal, and I actually had a harpsichord in the living room when I was growing up. So my mother comes from a musical family, and she was a harpsichordist. She wasn't a performer, but she learned it, she studied it. And so that's the first keyboard I played when I was a little child. I played the harpsichord, but then, when I started lessons, I started piano lessons, like most kids. So I started piano lessons when I was, 7 years old. And I got back to studying the harpsichord quite young. Actually, I was 11 when I started playing the harpsichord, seriously having a teacher. And it seems amazing to me now, but when I started harpsichord lessons, it was actually at my high school in Montreal, at Brooks High School, and it was a public high school, and they had a music program, and I was a harpsichord teacher. So that's where I started my harpsichord lessons. And now that program, unfortunately, is not completely shut down, but it's changed. They don't have harpsichord anymore. They just have orchestra. But yeah, I studied harpsichord at McGill University in Montreal, and then I did a master's degree in Amsterdam. And I started studying the fortepiano in Amsterdam as well. So when I came back here in Canada, I came back to Montreal, I incorporated all early keyboards in what I do. So I do a sort of historical approach to music and different keyboards, harpsichord, fortepiano, sometimes the organ. For the personal side, I have a little boy. He's 4 years old. And I live here with my partner. He's a fiddle player. And we live in Quebec City since 5 years now.
Yay! Interesting. So you play the harpsichord. You started on the harpsichord. I mean, how many people do you think grow up with a harpsichord in their living room? Not many, right?
For whom it's not a punishment.
You know who did, actually, is my mom, because her mom played the harpsichord.
Wow.
Is it the same harpsichord? Was it like passed down from generation to generation?
It is, and I'm looking at it right now. I'm looking at the harpsichord. That was my mother's and my grandmother's.
Wow.
Does your son play the harpsichord?
Yeah, that was my next question.
Well, you know, he's played it. I have very cute videos of him playing the harpsichord as a baby. But he hasn't started lessons yet. He's only 4. I think we're going to let him grow up. He likes to move. He can sit down for probably 20 seconds at a time.
Let's talk about the Francis Poulenc concerto, because this is, an example of like the harpsichord kind of out of time, as it were, out of the Baroque period where people usually place it. What can you tell us about this particular concerto?
So this concerto by Poulenc was written in the late 1920s, so it's in between the wars piece, and it was written specifically for a harpsichordist called Wanda Landowska. So Landowska, she was the main pioneer of the revival of the harpsichord. So she started studying the piano, and she had an incredible life and an incredible influence on, basically the whole early music movement that we have today. We owe a lot of it to her. There's some other pioneers that she really did a lot for it, and she had some contemporary pieces written for her. So as she was reviving the harpsichord, getting instruments made for her, some contemporary composers also wrote for her. So we have the concerto by Poulenc, we have the Defia that were written for her, and she played it on her harpsichord, which was made by Pleyel, who is a piano maker. So Wanda Landowska's harpsichord was not a historical copy as we have now and as they have in Toledo, which are really, they try to be very faithful copies of the early harpsichord. Her harpsichord was sort of halfway. It was made a bit bigger. It had metal in it, and it was had a big, it had more options for stops. And so it's an instrument that you can find nowadays, but it's kind of rare that we have harpsichords that are, we call them revival harpsichords, that's in the early 20th century, that are in good condition, because we don't really make those instruments anymore. So that's what Poulenc wrote this piece for. And it's a piece that seems incredibly happy. It's the concert champêtre, you imagine playing in nature. But there's something that seems like there's a scary part to it. It's like some savage moments in the concerto. You have the trumpet that sounds military, and you have to remember that this was written in between the wars. Like, those people had lived through war, and very soon there was going to be another one, and there was Hitler was about to come into power. It was not a quiet time, and people's lives, like Poulenc's life, Landowska's life, was it's hard to imagine everything that they lived through, And so there's, a lot of happiness, but this kind of grin to it, too, that's a bit that you can feel is a bit scary. And I actually, I have a quote for you. I don't know if you have time.
Oh, please.
I'm reading right now a book that came out relatively recently by Rebecca Solnit called Orwell's Roses. So it's about the life of George Orwell and also his love of nature, his garden, the sort of more trivial aspects of his life. And So Orwell lived exactly at the same time as Linda and Poulenc, and he was sent to Germany. He was a journalist. He wrote famously about the war and politics. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, most people know him from 1984, the dystopian novel, right?
Yeah, of course. And so as a journalist, he was sent to Germany after the Second World War, so maybe 10 years after my concerto was written. But he says, so I'm going to quote this. This is from Orwell. He saw a dead German soldier was lying supine at the foot of the steps. His face was a waxy yellow. On his breast, someone had laid a bunch of the lilac, which was blooming everywhere. So, and end of the quote. So you have this soldier that has the lilac on his breast because it's springtime. And so, like, for me, this image really sort of captures the feeling of this concerto. Like, it's spring, it's champêtre, it's happy, we have the flowers, but, there's also all the devastation of war that's just in front of you at the same time. So.
I'm curious, when you talk about these images that come to mind in association with a particular piece of music, I mean, how does that affect your performance, or how do you realize that performance, or is it different depending on, you're playing on lots of different instruments, really, when you go out and play these concerts? How does that work for you?
Well, music is kind of it's abstract, and then we have all these images that, that people associate with it. So sometimes some performers are going to have very precise images that help them interpret the music. And for some people, it's more vague. It's more of a general feeling. Some people think of colors and of moods. But for me, like, it's helpful to have, like, if we associate an image, then you're going to make sense of the passage. If you think pastoral and you think, like in the Disney movie Fantasia, so we have, like, the Beethoven Symphony, and we see the little angels and the shepherds rolling in the hill, and how do you call them? The fawns, I guess. Mm-hmm. And so these images are really, like, they bring the work of music alive because you really get it.
Now I've got visions of pink hippos dancing in my head to Punchielli music.
There you go. Yeah. It works. Yeah, so I find them helpful. It's not like I don't always have a precise image when I'm learning a piece, but often, I like to research a lot. I'm pretty, I'm very, like, I would say a very serious person. I'm always reading a book, I guess. But there's always, like, the context for me is important when I play a piece.
So, Mélisande, one of the things I'm looking forward to is hearing this live. I've only heard it recorded, and it's such a modern concerto compared to Baroque concerti. And in any harpsichord setting with orchestra, there's always the challenge of the harpsichord blending with the rest of the orchestra and remaining audible. Is that a bigger issue in the Poulenc concerto, or is it just given the modernity of it, or is it just another great harpsichord concerto from your perspective?
Well, I think the issue of balance when you play the harpsichord, it's always there because the instrument is not very loud. And I feel like, instruments just, with time, every instrument got louder and louder. Like a violin in the Baroque period was not built to produce as much sound as they do now, because now the strings have more tension, the strings are metal, the concert halls are getting bigger, the instruments are getting louder. And so when you have a harpsichord in a big concert hall with modern instruments, it's going to be hard to compete with the sound. So we might have a bit of help for that from the,
all concertos are really kind of rigged competitions. I mean, like,
between the harpsichord and the orchestra.
Well, no,
the soloist
between any soloist and an orchestra, it's always rigged. The composer has rigged it to a certain degree. The conductor helps to a certain degree, and the soloist does what they can. But it's, I think you can never assume that, oh my gosh, the soloist is overpowering the orchestra. That's never actually happening.
Yeah. Well, Mélisande makes a great point, though, because of instruments. Modern instruments are by nature louder than period instruments. But the harpsichord that you're going to be playing on is more of a period type harpsichord. as opposed to that modern harpsichord that Wanda Landowska premiered the piece on. I wonder if we can talk. We did a whole episode on is it Taskin Hubbard or Taskin Hubbard? I'm a little confused.
So Hubbard was American. So
yes,
Hubbard
that's
was American,
what I thought.
Taskin is French.
And so he built it, and Taskin is the model. So Taskin is the French Baroque harpsichord builder, and Hubbard is the modern American harpsichord maker that does a copy. So Hubbard is actually he's a real name that's important for us harpsichordists because he published the first book that's it's still like the main reference actually called what's it called? The harpsichord. I'm here in my library.
Yeah,
anyway,
it's important that you know the name of your instrument.
Years of harpsichord making.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. We should have had you on the podcast where we talked about the Taskin Hubbard instruments.
We'll do another one. Yeah.
Would have cleared it up right away. Have you played on a similar harpsichord or perhaps even the Hubbard before?
Well, actually, the harpsichord I have in my practice room is a Hubbard. So my grandmother ordered this harpsichord from Frank Hubbard in the 60s. And I think it's, like, from what I've seen of the pictures of the Toledo instrument, it's quite similar. So I'll feel right at home.
Wow, that's great.
That's great.
Good planning. I take it you guys plan that, right? No? Yes?
Happy accidents.
Sometimes things happen.
Yes, indeed.
Right.
Well, you say the harpsichord's right in front of you. I mean, here we are with bated breath if you want to play something for us. But you have to play like a modern, melody on the old harpsichord. Anyway.
Well, I don't know. Yeah.
Do you have any polka fanfares that you can play on? Yeah.
I can add it to my soundboard if you want to do a little fanfare. We're just kidding, Mélisande.
Yeah. I could play the beginning of Mahler 5, maybe.
Ah! There it is,
Well
the Mahler
played.
bell. For you Symphony Lab-ophiles who listen to the program, you know that every time we say that name, it's kind of like the Scottish play, It's,
Exactly.
Yeah, every time you say the name, we have to ring the bell.
So it does make me think of what Mahler 5 would sound like if instead of a trumpet, it was a harpsichord making that.
I don't have that kind of sound effect on my
We'll have to
soundboard.
improvise it, Mélisande, when you're in town.
Yeah, here's the closest I can get.
That is not close at all.
No. Was that a dentist drill or?
I didn't say it was close. I just said it was the closest I could get, or maybe this. I don't know.
Yeah, that's more like it.
Let's throw that in.
Yeah, that's what we're going to leave that alone.
Yeah.
What about the movements of the concerto, Mélisande? I'd love to know if you have a home base given some of your Fantasia inspirations. Like, is there a point when you're in the first movement that you're in your favorite part, or is it in the second or the third? What's your? I mean, it's a 20-minute work. Where are you happiest?
So I have to say, there's this part. Hold on. I think the first theme of the first movement is such a happy theme, and it really I could play that every day of my life, and it would put me in a good mood. But I think my favorite part is in the third movement. And we have this incredibly lyrical and melodic line. And, that's something that on the harpsichord we never get to do. Play a long, singing melodic line like that. And I'm just playing it, in unison with my two hands. And it goes like, I don't know if you can hear it well, but... So it's one of the times where, the whole orchestra is playing and the harpsichord has this very vocal line over everything, and it feels so indulgent because, it's something that this instrument is not really made to do. And it's also I don't know how it's going to be a tricky part for balance. And I'm also thinking what was Poulenc thinking, making the harpsichord play this extremely vocal line? Is he making fun of me? What's he doing here? Because is this going to work or not? But I think it's this is what I feel like, finally, I'm singing.
But it's really interesting because as you're talking about some of the potential balance issues, but my understanding is that one of the previous times you performed this piece was actually in a venue where, I mean, it would have been impossible for balance not to be an issue, right? Did you do this at Lenaudière?
Yeah.
And
well, it was kind of an issue. I don't know how successful it was. Like, you have to, and, I had very good feedback from people, but you have to have people in the audience listening and telling you, because, of course, when you're on stage, it's difficult to tell. So you have to trust the ears that are in the hall to tell you that, yes, it's okay. And
But that's a gorgeous venue, which basically kind of, I mean, what the Peristyle that you're going to be performing in is an incredibly unique venue and is wonderful, but it doesn't feel redolent of the outdoors. It is not in itself a bucolic venue. But
just string some garland, and a few decorations.
But Lenaudière is
I
very
have
different.
to say, like, my memory of this, my past performance of this concerto. So what Merwin was describing, I was playing it at the Festival de la Naudière, which takes place in Quebec every summer, and it's an outdoors theater. So I was playing there with the symphony orchestra on this outdoors stage, and it was twilight maybe, and I could smell the trees, hear the leaves rustling, and there was like little birds at the background, and I was playing the concert champêtre, and I couldn't believe how perfect it was, to have all this feeling. But
you should have put that in your rider.
Yeah. You want a bird? We can get you some birds.
You need some birds. You need some leaves rustling.
Well, and you haven't been to the Peristyle yet, but it's a wonderful space that you'll enjoy because it while being indoors, it does have the feeling of maybe being outdoors, and that'll make more sense when you're
kind of
here.
An amphitheater, ancient Greek style going on there. Mélisande, I have a question, given that you have the harpsichord there. Do you take requests?
No free bird. I know where you're going with this.
Oh, I was going to do Stairway to Heaven. Stairway to Heaven.
I'm
no Led
say
Zeppelin. Okay. Well, let's do our...
No.
Let's do our quiz.
We'll have to get a lute player to play that for you.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So, Mélisande, we're indoctrinating you into our family of quizzes here with the French Composer Facts Quiz. I have 8 different questions. And what we do is I run through the questions and the composers, and you make your choice. Either you can write it down, or you can do it by memory, or you can do it at the last minute. And then we'll go back to the beginning, okay? So let me get the quiz music going here. Okay, nice Parisian cafe music, right? This composer had 2 pianos stacked on top of each other in his apartment, but he used the upper one as a storage bin for newspapers, letters, parcels, and over 100 umbrellas. Was it Eric Satie, was it Hector Berlioz, or was it Maurice Ravel? So that's your first question. Second question is, his father was a shoemaker, he was a choir boy, and a celebrated viol player, and his life was immortalized on screen. Was that Jean-Baptiste Lully? Was that Marin Marais? Or was it Jean-Philippe Rameau? A, B, or C? Question number 3. He did not find fame until he was 50 years old when he started writing operas. Was that Jean-Baptiste Lully? Was that Marin Marais? Or was it Jean-Philippe Rameau? This female composer kept her maiden name after marriage. Was it Elisabeth Jacquet de la Guerre, Louise Farenc, or Cécile Chaminade? A, B, or C? Okay, then I have a little thing where you have to put composers in the order of the mentor and the mentee. In other words, I've got 3 composers here. You have to put them in the order of teacher and student, right? So that would be Camille Saint-Saëns, Hector Berlioz, and Gabriel Fauré. They weren't specifically their teacher, but they had a mentorship role.
Can you repeat those one more time?
Saint-Saëns, Berlioz, and Fauré. Okay? Now I have another round, the same thing, with 3 different composers, Léo Delibes, Adolphe Adam, and Adrien Boieldieu. A, B, or C? Which of these composers did not win the Prix de Rome? Was it Paul Dukas, Olivier Messiaen, or Maurice Ravel? And remember, it can be all of the above or none of the above for any of these.
You say this at the end of the 7th question of an 8-question quiz.
Sorry, let's go back. It was Dukas, Messiaen, and Ravel.
Yeah.
Who did not win the Grand Prix.
Yes. Finally, the last question. Which composer was a member of the Astronomical Society of France, and they had their own personal telescope? Was it Ambroise Thomas? Was it Camille Saint-Saëns? Or was it Jacques Offenbach? Huh. Okay, so that's the quiz. Are you still with us, Mélisande, or did you
Yeah.
Okay. So let's go back to the
I'm
beginning.
taking notes. Yeah.
Excellent. Now we'll go back to the beginning, and we'll get the answers. So this composer, the composer with 2 pianos on top of each other, using the upper one as a storage bin. How many people said Eric Satie?
I did not.
Yeah. Mélisande, are you raising your hand?
For sure, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's perfect.
It was.
Umbrella.
It was Eric
Satie.
Satie. It was Eric Satie, absolutely. So that goes to Mélisande.
Wasn't he obsessed with white rice or something like that?
White food. He only ate white food.
I didn't choose Satie because you only indicated that there were newspapers in there. You didn't say there was any white food.
Yeah, I know. I tried to be tricky.
He was original, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, this composer's father was a shoemaker. He was a choir boy, a celebrated viol player. He was also immortalized in a movie. How many people said Jean-Baptiste Lully?
No.
No. How many people said Marin Marais? Yeah? No? Well, that once again.
Wow.
That is Mélisande. Marin Marais. You remember that movie with Gérard Depardieu, Tout le matin du monde?
Oh my gosh, I did see that movie.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, that's bad then.
Okay. All right, this composer did not find fame until he was 50 and started writing operas. Was that Lully, Marais, or Rameau? Would you say Mélisande?
Rameau.
Rameau, yeah, I'm going to give that to you as well. All right, 3 different wins for Mélisande in a row. I have an idea that you're going to win this quiz, Mélisande. We're going to get to the point where there's no way that anybody else can win.
We call that dormy.
Okay.
Yeah.
This female composer kept their maiden name after marriage. Was it Elisabeth Jacquet de la Guerre? Was it Louise Farrenc? Or was it Cécile Chaminade? What do you say, Mélisande? I'm going to you for the answer.
Well, you know, I was going to say Jacquet de la Guerre, but I think she did keep her name, but I'm not sure about the other 2, so
Yeah.
might be all of them.
Well, how many people said Elisabeth Jacquet de la Guerre?
I did not.
Yeah. She is not the one, because de la Guerre was actually her husband's name. He was like an organist or something.
Oh, so Jacquet is her family
Yeah,
name.
she was born as Jacquet. So Louise Farrenc,
There you go.
she also took her husband's name.
Oh my god, I might have gotten one.
Yeah, because he was like a publisher or something, and Edition Farrenc, I think, was his company. And then Cécile Chaminade, she was married at one time, but it was like a kind of platonic relationship that they had. It was all spelled out that they would, not do certain things. Use your imagination there. And she did keep her birth name, Cécile Chaminade. So she is.
There you go.
Did anybody say Cécile? That was you, Merwin?
Yeah.
All right. I need to differentiate between the M's here. Merwin and Mélisande.
I just feel, I think I'm going to be going 1 for 8. But it's just better to not get a shutout.
There are 3 left. Okay.
I'm still working on the shutout over here.
Composers in order of mentor and mentee, and this is not where you can use, none of the above. Or
all of the above, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, Saint-Saëns, Berlioz, and Fauré. So, I'll tell you the right order, and you tell me who got it. First it was Berlioz, then it was Saint-Saëns, then it was Fauré. Yeah. Anybody get that? You got it, Merwin? Yeah. Did you get that? Oh, you're so honest. You should have said yes, of course.
I should have lied.
It's okay. It's good practice after customs, right?
Okay. So here's the second round of that. Putting composers in the order of teacher and student. I'll just give you the order. You tell me again if you chose those. It was Adrien Boieldieu, Adolphe Adam, and Léo Delibes.
I got it backwards.
I said them backwards. You just copied what I said. Did anybody else get that?
No.
No?
Say it again, sorry, I didn't follow.
Oh, yeah, you were doing something else. Okay, Boieldieu.
Trying drawing out. Yeah.
Boieldieu, that's really hard to say. Adrien Boieldieu, Adolphe Adam, and Léo Delibes. That was the order.
You know, I got it, I think. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Because Boieldieu, isn't he like the French Mozart?
Something like that. Yeah.
And he's like, took a chance with the other two because, there you go.
All right. Excellent. Which of these composers did not win the Prix de Rome? Dukas, Messiaen, or Ravel? Which did not win the Prix de Rome? What do you say, Zach? I have a feeling that you might have the correct answer.
I said none of the above.
That is actually wrong because the question was who did not win the Prix de Rome.
Oh. All of the above. There we go.
Yes, all of the above. All of the above. Paul Dukas, Olivier Messiaen. Messiaen tried one time and he got close, but then he was like, oh, forget it. I didn't want that prize anyway, so he didn't do it. Ravel caused a huge scandal when he was denied.
Yeah, Ravel was like, I remember
Dukas was the only question.
So I thought it would be Ravel. Yeah.
Yeah, and Dukas, whose music is on the concert, by the way, there's that Fantasia tie-in, did not win also. Okay, the last question is, which composer was a member of the Astronomical Society of France and had their own personal telescope? Was it Ambroise Thomas, Camille Saint-Saëns, or Jacques Offenbach? A, B, or C? How many people said Jacques Offenbach?
I said Offenbach.
Merwin, how many people said Ambroise Thomas? Zach, how many people said Camille Saint-Saëns? That's your cue, Mélisande.
Well, I didn't know, so I didn't even guess.
If you had to guess, if you had to just throw your name out.
If you had to guess of those three.
I gave up on that question.
Well, if you had to choose one, just for kicks.
You get a free shot.
Yeah, just to rub it in, because you already won the quiz. So if you were to say Camille Saint-Saëns, you would be correct. Yeah. I thought I was going to trip you up with the Offenbach-Jules Verne connection.
I chose Offenbach.
Yeah. But definitely the winner by a long shot of our quiz today was our guest, Mélisande McNabney. Congratulations to you, Mélisande. Merwin's going to tell you what you win.
Thank you.
I think you win a new first sentence of your bio. Winner of the Toledo Symphony Lab quiz.
Mélisande, how does this stack up to all of your other victories in your career?
Well, I have to say I was a bit nervous this morning, but it all went, medium well, and I'm grateful.
Yeah, just like I like my steaks. That was wonderful.
Yeah, I was thinking that sounded too familiar, like medium rare. Is that it?
Well, we're going to bring this part of the show to a close because I'm going to talk with JoAnn Falletta next. So before we go, I'm going to talk to her about the other orchestral repertoire on the program. I wonder if you guys have any questions for her, and especially you, Mélisande, if I can pass anything on. What would you want to know ahead of time?
Okay, well, sure. What I was thinking of asking JoAnn Falletta was because I saw recently that she also was a lute player. I think she was a guitar player, but she also played the lute. There's a recording that I saw that she made many years ago, and so there's this connection with the early music and the early repertoire. And I was wondering if Landowska had any influence on her, or what's her relationship with Landowska, and if there's
Interesting.
There's anything.
Brad is writing furious.
Yeah, I don't have to do any work for this interview. I'm getting all the questions here. Merwin, what do you want to know?
I'm very curious, as somebody who's a guest conductor and has guest conducted orchestras all around the world. What's it like to guest conduct Bolero? How do you try to bring your stamp to it, or is this how do you make something out of that particular kind of combination of ingredients. How, like, I've always been kind of fascinated by when you're walking and you don't know what your soloists are going to do. I've always found that I would be really interested in hearing what she thinks about that.
Well, on the surface, the only variations are really just in dynamics, how loud it is, and the
little
tempo.
Bit of phrasing.
Keeping the tempo, consistent throughout, and a little bit of phrasing.
But I think there's, I'm sure there are deeper levels to plumb, and I'd be curious to hear what she says.
Yeah.
Well, somebody like Leonard Bernstein would be jumping up and down on the podium and drawing attention to themselves and subdividing all the beats and everything.
He could just conduct it with an eyebrow, though. He did that too.
Yeah. Well, that's the other extreme as well.
Exactly.
So it'd be interesting to see which side of the fence that JoAnn Falletta falls on. Zach, you have anything you want me to ask?
Well, I was along the same lines as Merwin. Is Warhorse of Bolero is, people love to love it and love to hate it, depending on which side of the fence you fall. But it is. I am always interested. I think I've seen a couple really great performances of it, and I've seen a couple really mediocre performances of it. But there has to be some strategy to making it more than passable or perfunctory. So,
which one are we going to hear on Saturday?
Of course, outstanding. Like, I think this is going to be just one of the more exciting programs. So, but the through line of French music, we're looking at a kind of a narrow band of a compositional window here. And of course, there was great French music before and after. So my question to her is, from a programmatic standpoint, what does this kind of era of French music represent for her? And especially given that it has the tie back to the old early music with the harpsichord concerto, how and why is this special?
Yeah. All right. I will pass all of these questions on to JoAnn. We'll talk about what else is on the concert. That's coming up next. I want to remind folks, concert's happening this Saturday, February 4th, 8 p.m. at the Toledo Museum of Art Peristyle. JoAnn Falletta is the conductor, and the harpsichord soloist is our guest today, Mélisande McNabney. We're going to hear an all-French program, music of Paul Dukas and Maurice Ravel, as well as the Concert Champêtre, the harpsichord concerto by Francis Poulenc. I want to thank all of you for joining me today for Toledo Symphony Lab, and especially to you, Mélisande. Thanks for calling in and joining us.
Thanks so much.
I've got the wonderful conductor JoAnn Falletta here with me, really one of the top conductors in the music world today, Grammy-winning conductor, trailblazer, among other things, and appearing with the Toledo Symphony this Saturday at 8 p.m. Now, JoAnn, first of all, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
The last time I saw you here in Toledo was about a year ago. You did an all-American program then. Now you're doing an all-French program.
I know. I'm delighted.
Yeah. Well, we're delighted to have you back in Toledo. It's really wonderful to hear your voice. Of course, I've played a lot of your recordings in the interim, but we're looking forward to seeing you in person. Let's talk a little bit about the other music on the concert besides the harpsichord concerto, because we talked a lot about that, although I did get questions from our panelists for you. So we'll get to that in a moment. But I wonder if we can talk a little bit about the Dukas, the fanfare from La Paris, which is a great opening for a concert. Very brassy, huh?
It is. I'm so glad we have this on. I mean, it really features, of course, only the brass section. And it's the opening to this big opera about the Perrys were supposedly fallen angels who cannot get back into heaven until they do something good in the world. But you can't tell that from the overture. It's simply a brilliant display of brass pyrotechnics. So I'm looking forward to that. I mean, how often do we get to start a concert on that kind of note? It's very short and very wonderfully French and also celebratory, and that's a good way to start.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also very ear-catching, like the different harmonies. There's a little bit of unexpectedness going on throughout the work.
Yeah. People haven't heard it. If people haven't heard it, I think they'll be very, very pleasantly moved by this wonderful piece.
Yeah. Well, it's a great setup for the harpsichord concerto, which follows. And I guess I'll ask you a question that Mélisande had for you. She was talking about the fact that you were a fellow stringed instrument player. You played guitar and a lute, I guess. And she wanted to know if Wanda Landowska had any influence on you, because Wanda Landowska, of course, premiered the Poulenc harpsichord concerto. So that was her question for you.
Well, yes. I listened to the recordings, and Mélisande is very very perceptive about this. As a guitarist, I identified with the harpsichord, and of course, she was one of the greats of all time. But the idea that it's a plucked instrument. I mean, we use our fingers, and of course, the harpsichord is using its little plectrums inside the instrument. But the wonderful qualities of both instruments are very, very similar. So I did listen because I wanted to understand the phrasing that one especially has to be very conscious of in an instrument that has a decay, like the harpsichord or the guitar. So thank you, Mélisande. That's a beautiful question.
Well, our next question pertains to Maurice Ravel. There are two works of Ravel on the concert, including the iconic Bolero. And we talked a little bit about this, but Merwin wanted to know, he's a principal second violin in the orchestra. He wanted to know, as a guest conductor for orchestras around the world, what is it like for you to guest conduct Bolero? Do you put your own stamp on it, and how would you do that?
Well, my personal philosophy of going to an orchestra as a guest conductor is that you open the door to being inspired by the orchestra, and you take a lot of their personality into your interpretation. So with Bolero, that's especially true because there are all these great soloists sitting in the chairs of the orchestra, from flute to trombone and snare drum. So they are really going to inspire this performance. But my job is the architecture of the piece, making sure that the trajectory of an unusual piece, because it is repetitive in the most wonderful way, makes sense to the audience and builds to that great climax. So that's my role, but it's going to be informed very much by every single solo, and I can't wait to hear them.
So it's different pretty much every time that you conduct the work with other orchestras, yeah?
Absolutely, and that's what I love about music. It just shows the infinite possibilities with the same notes in front of you, and that's the great. Makes it, in my estimation, the most sophisticated art form, because it's always changing.
What can you tell us about this ballet suite, the Daphnis and Chloe ballet? In itself very long, but Ravel made a couple of suites out of it, and you're doing the suite number 2 from Daphnis and Chloe.
That's right. That's right. And Ravel loved to be inspired by things that were outside his world. In this case, he's going back to ancient Greece, to a love story. And in the second suite, Chloe had been kidnapped by pirates, but thanks to Pan, the god, she's been rescued. And so we pick it up at the point where Daphnis is on the ground, exhausted from searching for her, and he's devastated that she is gone, and the sun rises. And this piece is famous for this. It's very possibly the most beautiful sunrise ever written. The sun comes up, he wakes up, and as he opens his eyes, he sees Chloe running towards him. And she explains that Pan has saved her life, and Pan told her that he did this because of his great love, Syrinx, whom he lost. She ran away from him, and he fashioned reads into his panpipe in her memory. So they tell that story in our music, the great story of Pan playing on his flute. Hence, the flute has a major role. And then there's a wild celebration that they're reunited. So, but in the hands of Maurice Ravel, this is one of the greatest treasures we have in the orchestra.
Wow. Yeah, now I definitely have to go back and listen to it again with your information in mind.
Yeah.
Well, folks can see this concert live. It's happening this Saturday, February 4th at 8 p.m. in the Toledo Museum of Art Peristyle. JoAnn Falletta is the conductor. We'll also hear the concert champêtre, or the harpsichord concerto of Francis Poulenc. That is by the harpsichord soloist Mélisande McNabney. Have you worked with Mélisande before on stage?
No, I haven't. And it's a great pleasure to really be with her.
Yeah, well, the feeling is definitely mutual from what she had to say. I do have one more question here for you, and this is kind of a catch-all. What does the French repertoire represented in this concert mean to you, especially in the context of the Poulenc concerto, looking back and forward? What makes it special for you?
Well, it's very special because it represents two schools of French music, Ravel being the great impressionist that he was, but Poulenc being a little bit of a rebel and going on to the next phase, because the Les Six, of which Poulenc was a member, there's the six of us, they call themselves, the six young rebel composers, they were making a statement. It's time for something new, and we are the new. We're the fresh new voice. So this Poulenc, I think people will see, is quite cheeky. It's quite insouciant. I mean, it's just irresistible. But in the context of Ravel, it's very interesting to see how French music was evolving.
Well, we are looking forward to having you here, and I thank you for making the time to talk with us today here on Toledo Symphony Lab.
Well, thank you so much. Looking forward.
Again, if you want to find more information about this concert, you can go online to the Symphony website at toledosymphony.com, or you can call the box office at 419-246-8000. The program is this Saturday at 8 p.m. at the Peristyle. JoAnn Falletta conducting with harpsichordist Mélisande McNabney, an all-French program including the harpsichord concerto of Francis Poulenc, as well as two wonderful selections by Maurice Ravel, and beginning with a big brass fanfare from Paul Dukas. This program is a production of WGTE Public Media in collaboration with our sponsor, the Toledo Symphony, with generous support from the Rita Barber Kern Foundation. You can download episodes of this program as a podcast by going to our website. That's at wgte.org/lab. You can also subscribe to us through your podcast app of choice, including Apple, Google, and Spotify podcasts. Don't forget to check out all the upcoming events at the Symphony by visiting their website at toledosymphony.com and their various social media outlets on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can find the TSO streaming platform online at stream.artstoledo.com. I'm Brad Cresswell. You've been listening to Toledo Symphony Lab from FM 91.